بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. الحمد لله رب العالمين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تعالى في كتابه المجيد: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات على محمد. Second salawat for love of the Ahlul Bayt. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And your third with the loudest of your voices for Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. A'adham Allah lakum al-ajr. May Allah increase your reward for your grief over the difficulties of the Ahlul Bayt. Tonight, inshallah, we start by continuing our discussion around questions associated with the fundamentals of our faith. Because again, these fundamentals of our faith are what define our characteristics and give us proximity to Allah and give meaning to our faith and add value to the actions of our faith. The question that inshallah we'll start our discussion with today is the question of whether or not Allah has a body. Now, the natural answer that we have been taught and we know of is that no, Allah does not have a body. The problem comes when you have to then explain, what do you mean Allah doesn't have a body? How can you say that? People come when they attack us on this subject or they discuss the subject with us, even amongst the Muslimin, they come from the Quran and they say, but I see in the Quran where Allah says, He says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, قَالَ يَا إِبْلِيسُ مَا مَنَعَكَ أَن تَسْجُدَ لِمَا خَلَقْتُ بِيَدَيْهِ. When Allah talks to Iblis and why Iblis did not do sajda to his creation, Nabi Adam, He says, oh Iblis, what stopped you from doing sajda to that which I created with my hands? I say, what does this mean, hands? Then we see, for example, in Ayatul Kursi, وَسِعَ كُرْسِيهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. His throne extends over the heavens and the earth. In other instances, we see reference to an arsh, a seat, a throne. Why does Allah have a chair then? Why does Allah have hands then? What does it mean when He says hands? What does it mean when we see, for example, وَلِلَّهِ مَشْرِقِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ فَأَيْنَمَا تُوَلُّوا فَثَمَ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. فَثَمَ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. Whether you turn to the east or you turn to the west, wherever you look, you will see the face, the wajh of Allah. So now we're seeing references to His seat, His throne. We see references to His having hands. Alaykum as-salam. We see references to having a face. Then we see others where it says, for example, in Hadith al-Qudsi, where it talks about فَمَنْ أَبْغَضَ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ أَبْغَضَ اللَّهِ غَضَبَ اللَّهِ. His anger, وَرَضَى Allah, His pleasure. So people use these features and they say, okay, fine, you say He doesn't have a body, then what does this mean? How do we understand these concepts? How do we differentiate with these concepts? And associated with this topic, for example, is the association where we take a look at Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Taymiyyah is a personality in history from whom the Wahhabis and the Salafi take their aqaid. They take their principles of faith from Ibn Taymiyyah. Ibn Taymiyyah presents many different ideas, and one of the reasons why amongst even his contemporaries of the Ahl Sunnah, he was considered to be a cursed individual. We see in the history of Ibn Taymiyyah, he went to prison twice for his ideologies and his principles. When we take a look at, for example, his statements, and someone said, do we really believe that he actually said that this person has a body, that Allah has a body? Ibn Battuta says, when he discusses this issue and this topic, he says that I tell you that I myself saw that when this person, Ibn Taymiyyah, sat and gave a lecture in Damascus after during one of his khutbahs, he said there, and he said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَنزِلُ إِلَى السَّمَاءِ الدُّنْيَا كَنَزُولِ هَذَا. He says, Allah comes down to the heavens of the earth like this, me coming down. And while he was sitting on the mimbar, he went down a step to demonstrate that Allah has a physical entity. This is Ibn Battuta. This is somebody else. This is a contemporary scholar who witnessed this action. To say that, okay, maybe some people don't believe this, some people... But this wasn't the limit of Ibn Taymiyyah's position. This is why the Salafi and the Wahhabi mentality is, in many aspects, discusses a physical presence of Allah. So in some aspects we find that he was talking about the physical body of Allah. In other aspects we talk about that he said that Allah is contained within locations and present in certain positions. In other ones he said that these Kitab al-Samawat, these heavenly books, are actually the words of Allah. These are the physical words that Allah Himself speaks. And that Allah speaks, and these are the words that He utilizes. Although, he says, as we say that there is nothing like Allah, His voice is like no human voice. Astaghfirullah. But He has a voice. And the way He uses words is not like the way normal people use words, but He has words. And these are physically His words and His representation. And then he said in other examples that, for example, Allah is made up of parts. He uses an example that Allah is like a nakhla, like a tree, like a palm tree. And that He has parts which are close to some locations and other parts which are further from other locations, meaning in some places He is close to something, other places He is further from something. And that He can have distance and qurb to something. All of these show an association with the body. So how do we answer this? How do we articulate our understanding of what is Allah to combat such statements? Well, first off, when we talk about Allah creating with His hands, it talks about His creation, His power and His ability to create. The example is hakiki and majazan, literal meaning of something and something that's used as a metaphor, as an explanation. So Allah, when He uses the example of His hands, He's talking about what I created with my power, not necessarily that He has physical hands. When He talks about wajhullah and He representation of the face of Allah, no, it's not the physical face of Allah. It's the representation of Allah in such a sense that you see the signs of Allah present in the world. That whether you look to the east or the west, there are signs within this earth that you cannot deny indicate the presence of Allah. When we talk about the arsh and the throne of Allah, it's not a physical throne. It's not as Abu Huraira explains and describes it, that Allah will sit on a chair and there'll be weight on the chair. No, why? Because the idea of Allah being mujassim, having a body, is very difficult for us to accept. Because a body has certain restrictions on it that are absent from Allah. For example, for a body to be present in one place, it has to be absent from another place. If I'm sitting here, I'm not sitting there. And we know that Allah is present everywhere. When we say, for example, at the same point in time that something has a body, it has a presence, that means at the same point in time it is restricted by a time. It is located in a particular location at a time. Right now I am sitting here. 15 minutes ago I wasn't sitting here. And this becomes a problem, that if we say Allah is present everywhere, He can't be present everywhere if He has a body. Same thing with a location. If we were to say that Allah has a location, that means that He is present in one place, meaning He is absent from another place. This ideology that Allah can have a body and do all these other things are the association of imagination. It is someone's imagination. The same way, for example, to give you an example on how to understand this, we see that when it comes to the imagination of people, they come up with very many ideas that something should be possible. Let's say, for example, the movie Back to the Future. To give you a contemporary example. In this movie, we see these people, they move from location to location, and there are many fantastic things that exist within that time. They can fly, the machines travel in time, they have all of these features and these assets. No one ever took a look at the practicality, is this something that's physically feasible, when they created this with their imagination. They just said, yeah, inshallah, by that time we'll figure out how to do this. They never looked at the reality, the mechanics of it. If they would have looked at the mechanics of it, they would have said, this is mahal, this is impossible, it can't be done. But when it comes to imagination and entertainment, no one looks at the reality or the feasibility. They say, I want my enjoyment. I want to enjoy the experience, so I can come up with anything I choose. And unfortunately, these personalities, they've taken this concept of enjoyment and personal desire and put it towards Allah. That said, if I can imagine it, then why can't Allah do it? Na'udhu billah, astaghfirullah. No. For us and our understanding of Allah to be valid, we have to look within the parameters of what are the attributes that He has appointed for us to look towards. We have to look at the examples and the explanation He has provided for us. Those of His attributes that He has given us, we only describe Allah within those parameters. So therefore, the idea of Allah having a body is impossible, because it violates the parameters that He is present everywhere at every time. There is no restriction upon Him by location, by time, by size, by shape. Otherwise, Allah can't be present everywhere at every time. He would be restricted to certain locations. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. If we're getting too far, let me know. We're going to, stay with me here. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So then these people, they ask a question. They say, then why, if Allah doesn't have any restriction on time or place, and Allah doesn't have a body, and Allah doesn't have a location that He's fixed in, why does He make us pray towards Qibla? Shouldn't it be possible then that I can pray in any direction and it would reach Allah? Shouldn't it be possible then that Allah doesn't need me to point to Qibla because He's everywhere? I should be able to pray in any fashion I want, any time I want, any place I want. Pay attention now. If I lose you now, you're gone. The answer comes is that this is an incorrect understanding. You haven't understood the situation correctly. Allah doesn't appoint a Qibla because He needs it. He appoints a Qibla because we need it. It is our necessity to have a location to point and to direct our prayers towards, not His necessity that He can only receive prayers in one location. How? Let's take a look, for example, if we could pray in any direction. Right now we already have many subsects and sections within our communities where there's the various schools of thought, and then there's the various cultures. If we had any direction of Qibla we chose, we'd have people, you'd have the masjid that prays northeast, you'd have the masjid that prays south, you'd have the masjid that prays west, you have the masjid that prays east, and then you'd have another group of disunity amongst the people. Have another aspect. Oh, which one of the groups are you? Oh, I'm the ones who pray to the south. I'm the ones who pray to the north. You'd have two brothers who come to the same place to pray, and one would face the other. My Qibla is this way, my Qibla is this way. I'm going to pray here, I'm going to... No. Allah, when He appoints a Qibla, it is for our necessity. It is for our ability to have unity amongst ourselves, that we can stand together in prayer, that we can work together, that we can create a community, we can be focused. Even now, for example, one of the things that it's very important that we always remember, that this information and these sciences and this knowledge is not so that we go out and debate with it. And we go to, for example, the Wahhabi and say, oh, all of this is wrong for you. No, listen, mujadila and debate is something our Holy Prophet used to hate. He disliked it. Our Prophet invited to Islam through the example of his characteristics and his mannerism. And He invited to Islam by letting people come and ask questions and see the answer themselves. When you, for example, come and present an opinion and are very forceful about it and go out and say, for example, that you are wrong and this is wrong and this is the right way, what you do is that personality has one of two reactions to you. It's called a polarization effect. Either he will agree with you and he will support you and he will become your friend, or two, he will become your enemy and he will hate you. In marketing, for example, certain companies actually use this process. For example, one very particular, Red Bull. Red Bull has this philosophy: I don't want anyone to be indifferent about my product. I want you to talk about my product whether you love it or you hate it. I want the communication to go out. Islam is not a product that we need to market. Islam is something beautiful that people, when they look at it and they see its emulation in existence, they are attracted to it. Whether they are attracted to it by the association of prayer within a personality and seeing a person pray, whether they are attracted to the way that person's akhlaq is very good and very proper, whether they are attracted to the cleanliness that is associated with it, or the way that parents raise their children. Within Islam, each person is welcome to take a look and see at the different aspects of Islam and decide what they are drawn to, instead of us going out and pushing it. So again, these informations that we talk about and we compare the ideologies of different schools of thought and we find the flaws in it, is not so that we go and attack that school of thought, because that attack will either turn them against us or make them our supporter. Legitimately, when you go and you attack someone's ideology, there's very few chances he's going to become your supporter. Most likely he's going to become your enemy, as we see in the world right now. Rather, you live the attributes and you educate yourself and you raise your standards, so that tomorrow, if someone comes and approaches you with an intellectual question, you know how to answer it. You're familiar with those ideologies. And that's where our responsibility comes in, is to learn about these aspects of Tawheed, so that when we sit, we can have intellectual and intelligent thoughts first, then conversations. And we focus on these ideas. Now, one of the things that we have to address when we come to the questions, and inshallah tomorrow night, if we begin on time, we'll start with the questioning about the justice of Allah. And we'll start with talking about the idea that how can Allah be just when we see suffering in the world? How can we recognize that Allah is just when we take a look at the difficulties that are present in this world? But before we get to that topic, if you recite a salawat for me. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We are getting to that point in this month where almost 2/3 of this month has left us. And our Holy Prophet, he gave a khutbah at the end of the month of Sha'ban, that Imam al-Radha alayhi salam narrates for us. And it's in the book Uyun al-Akhbar and Al-Amali of Sheikh Saduq, where this khutbah is narrated, and the khutbah is basically educating the people of that time the importance and the value of the month of Ramadan. Now, the same way, this year when Ramadan has come upon us, some people, nobody here of course, were like, such long and hard fasts, how difficult. Can you believe how hard these fasts are, or how long the days will be and how difficult it is, and I have to go to work and how will I do without coffee, or do you know how thirsty, how will I, fulan and fulan. In the same way, in that time, people had the same fears of the month of Ramadan as well too, and they had the same problems with it, which is why our Holy Prophet took the effort and he took this time and he started to explain to them that if you understood the value of Ramadan, هذا شهر هو أفضل الشهور وأيامه أفضل الأيام ولياله أفضل الليالي وساعته أفضل الساعات. This is the month that is the best of the months. Its days are the best of days, its nights are the best of nights, and its hours are the best of hours. This is the month when you are the guest of Allah. Imagine such a great personality as Allah, who is without need, who created you, who gave you everything you have. On top of that, He has invited you to be His guest in this month. And now that as we enter these nights of Qadr are very important for us to reflect. And our Prophet in this sermon spends much time on giving us instruction on how to utilize this month, makhsusan don't let these nights pass you by without taking the advice of our Holy Prophet. Where he says, أَنفَاسُكُمْ فِيهِ تَسْبِيحٌ. This is the month where your breath is tasbih. وَنَوْمُكُمْ فِيهِ دُعَاء. نَوْمُكُمْ فِيهِ عِبَادَةٌ. Your sleep in this month is worship. وَعَمَلُكُمْ فِيهِ مَقْبُولٌ. Your actions in this month are accepted. Imagine that every day we go and we pray and we have doubt. Did I pray correctly? Was anything on me najis? Was I in the correct place? We have this doubt constantly that did we fulfill our actions correctly or not? The beauty and the blessing of this month is that without doubt, your Holy Prophet is guaranteeing you that the actions you perform in this month are accepted. وَدُعَاءَكُمْ فِيهِ مُسْتَجَابٌ. And your prayers in this month, your supplications in this month are answered. How many of us don't have something we would like to ask Allah for? How many of us don't have something that we desire from Allah, whether it is in dunya or whether it is in akhirah? And we know that in this month, our dua is accepted. And he explains to us, he says, don't let this month go by. فَإِنَّ الشَّقِيَّ مَنْ حُرِمَ غُفْرَانَ اللَّهِ فِي هَذَا الشَّهْرِ الْعَظِيمِ. Surely the unfortunate one, the loser, the one who is in the worst of conditions is the one who gets through this month and his istighfar, his repentance is not accepted. These nights are special nights. These nights we see in the Quran promises us that this one night is better than 1,000 months. How unfortunate if we were not to take a few minutes and ask Allah for forgiveness from our sins with sincere hearts. One of the a'mal of the night of Qadr is to say astaghfirullah wa atubu ilayh. Ba'd al-a'mal, in some it's 70 times, in most it's 100 times, makhsus in this night. And when you open your mouth and you start to move your tongue and you say astaghfirullah wa atubu, I seek forgiveness from Allah and I return to Him. Concentrate in your heart on those sins that you have either committed that Allah has hidden from people or has made public. And ask for the forgiveness. Imagine, our Prophet explained to us, he said, there is no sin that you commit in this life except that it will be exposed on the day of judgment before all the people. There is no sin that you commit in this life that Allah will not expose in this world before you leave this world. How many of us have sins that we wish we could hide? We wish that they would never be shown to the public, that we could be forgiven for them. And this is that month. Debased is the one who is not forgiven in this month. If you're not forgiven in this month, then when will you be forgiven? Is there any other time? It's a very difficult question, which is why these nights concentrate on this idea of seeking your forgiveness. وَمَنْ أَكْثَرَ فِيهِ مِنْ صَلَاةِ عَلَيَّ ثَقَلَ اللَّهُ مِيزَانُهُ يَوْمَ تَخَفَّ الْمُوَازِينَ. When he continues, and he continues with many advices, but this one advice is very, very important. He says, and whoever increases upon me salawat and sending peace and blessings upon me, Allah will make his scale heavy on the day when scales are light. The point of mentioning this particular item is that these nights, the 19th, the 21st, and the 23rd, and even all of these nights, it's recommended you stay awake. And when you stay awake, sometimes you get tired of doing the a'mal, or you get tired of doing other acts of worship, or for the young ones, you don't know which acts of worship to perform, or some things are too difficult to do. This one action of reciting salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad is one of the key actions you can perform. Just take a tasbih, sit with a tasbih and recite salawat over and over again. When you sit in your car on your way home, recite salawat on your hands. Recite salawat in any fashion. Don't let these nights go without you offering at least one tasbih of salawat. Without offering at least one tasbih, asking Allah's forgiveness, istighfar. It is also one of the easier a'mal of this month and of these nights is to recite Surah Al-Qadr. To the extent where Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam, صل على محمد وآل He explained, he said that whoever, and this is one of the khas a'mal for the 23rd, he says on the night of the 23rd, whoever recites this Surah Qadr 1,000 times, Allah guarantees that he will see such a miracle happen to him that his faith in Islam and faith in Allah will be strengthened beyond doubt. Yani it's one of those key things, and there are many narrations about people who have found this to be true and have found this to be an actual a'mal that they've completed, and they have seen something or they have experienced something through which Allah has strengthened their yaqeen, has strengthened their faith in Islam and strengthened their faith in knowing Allah. Now imagine, this is our Prophet giving us these advices to make sure we don't let this month go without taking advantage of it. So remember, tonight start this process. He continues and he says, وَمَنْ تَلَأَ فِيهِ آيَةً مِّن قُرْآنِ كَانَ لَهُ مِثْلَ أَجْرٍ مَنْ خَتَمَ الْقُرْآنُ فِي غَيْرِهِ مِنَ الشَّهُورِ. He says, one who recites but one verse of Qur'an in this month, his reward as if one who finished reciting the whole Qur'an in any other month. Meaning that each verse of Qur'an in this month is as if you recited the whole Qur'an. The whole Qur'an. Every ayah holds that same weight. Now, just to elaborate on this to make sure it's understood in the best of fashions. Yes, it's good to recite the Qur'an without looking at the Qur'an. Yes, that's a good thing. But in particular, in these nights, make an effort to open the Qur'an and sit in front of the Qur'an and look at the words of the Qur'an as you read it. Someone asked the Holy Prophet, and they asked him specifically, Ya Rasulullah, I have memorized the Qur'an. Is it better for me to look at it when I read it or to read it from my memory? Afwan, it's mumkin, this is from Imam as-Sadiq alayhi salam. Imam as-Sadiq says there is greater reward in looking at the Qur'an as you recite it. Make an effort. These are the nights of the Qur'an. These are the nights of the revelation of the Qur'an. Build your association with the Qur'an. We see that as the Prophet continues the speech, Amir al-Mu'mineen asks him, because Amir al-Mu'mineen is present as Rasulullah is giving this speech, he says, Ya Rasulullah, وَمَا هُوَ أَفْضَلُ الْأَعْمَالِ فِي هَذَا الشَّهْرِ. What is the best of deeds in this month? Look at the importance of this question. What is the best of deeds in this month? What is the best thing that I should do? قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله يا أبا الحسن أفضل الأعمال في هذا الشهر هو ورع عن المحارم الله. The best of deeds, O Abu al-Hasan, in this month is to stay away from the things that Allah has forbidden you. Imagine the reward. To stay away from the things that Allah has forbidden you. That's it. Meaning this month is so blessed that you're, by doing nothing and simply avoiding sin, you have done the best of deeds. And khususan in these nights, try your hardest to stay away from any sin. And try in this month to stay away from sin. This month, by its beauty and its structure, is not a month of action of the physical body. Why? Specifically in this month, we are not using our physical bodies to eat or to move around or do anything. Rather, it is the month of the spirit and the month of your spirit. Why? Because it is your spirit that moves you to act, to desire to eat. It is your spirit that moves you to act and perform certain actions. And in this month, you are controlling your nafs. Think about it. Imagine, now I ask you, when you move your hand, or when you listen to something, what's listening, what's hearing? Is it your ear? Your ear is a tool. It hears everything. Is it your brain? Your brain processes every sound that comes into it and acknowledges every single sound that enters your brain. It's like a computer processor. It is aware of everything. However, certain things you remember, certain things you focus on, other sounds you ignore. For example, the sound of the air conditioning, the sound of the door opening, the sound of the carpet moving. All of these things you're ignoring. Hopefully you're listening to me. But that is your spirit, that's your soul. Your soul is what controls and what is aware of its surroundings. And in this month, you are training your soul. You're training your soul to avoid certain things, to avoid those things that you think are a necessity of life, whether they be food or water, so that your soul develops the ability to avoid those things that are forbidden for you in the rest of the year. In the same way, concentrate and focus this aspect of your soul to become aware of Allah's presence, to acknowledge His presence in the world. Ask Allah in this night, in these nights, to give you the focus so that you can do those actions that He is pleased with and avoid those actions that He is upset with. Let this month be the month in which your actions start to match your words, and that when you say you are a Muslim, your actions show it. And your love and relationship with Allah strengthens and increases. Our Holy Prophet continued this khutbah, and a very interesting point comes after he says, Ya Abul Hasan, he says, Ya Abul Hasan, inna ahsanul a'mal fi hadha ash-shahr huwa wara' an maharimillah thumma baka. As soon as he finished the statement, my Prophet began to cry. Amir al-Mu'mineen replies to him, he says, Ma yubqika ya Rasulullah. Oh my Prophet, oh my beloved Prophet, what made you cry? Why would you cry? He replies, Ya Ali, abqi lima yastahillu minka fi hadha ash-shahr. Oh Ali, I am crying because I see what will happen to you in this month. كأني بك وأنت تصلي لربك وقد انتبعث أشقي الأولين شقيق آقرا ناقة الثمود فضربك. Oh Ali, it is as if I see you and you are in the state of prayer and you are praying to Allah. And the worst of mankind from amongst the first of the people and the last of the people, the one who killed the camel of Thamud, it is as if I see him, the worst of all creation, he comes and he strikes you while you are praying. ضربة على قرنك فخضب منها لحيتك. He hits you on the crown of your head. He hits you on the front of your head. And from that, the blood comes and it colors your beard. Imagine the difficulty. My Prophet, knowing that this will happen to Amir al-Mu'mineen, is crying. Amir al-Mu'mineen, look at his status, look at the beauty of Amir al-Mu'mineen. He says, Ya Rasulullah, وَذَلِكْ فِي سَلَامَةٍ مِّن دِينِي. Oh Rasulullah, will my faith be safe at this time? Will I be amongst the Muslimin? Will I be one who submits to Allah truly in this condition? He says, Na'am, salamati min dinik. Yes, your deen will be safe. And he continues to cry. And my Prophet says, Ya Ali, man qatalaka faqad qatalani. We come here and we commemorate the martyrdom of Amir al-Mu'mineen, but look at the words of Rasulullah. He says, Oh Ali, one who has killed you has killed me. This is the martyrdom of not just Amir al-Mu'mineen, but also one in which Rasulullah feels the pain. हम देखते हैं इस रात में कि ये वो रात है जो मेरे मौला ने बहुत बेचैनी से गुजारी है. ये वो रात है जिसमें उम्मे कुलसूम सुनाती है कि आज मेरे बाबा मेरे घर आए इफ्तार के लिए. ये आदत थी मौला अली की वो रात को इफ्तार अपने बच्चों के घर करते थे. इस रात में जब उम्मे कुलसूम के घर गए हैं तो उम्मे कुलसूम कहती है, मैंने देखा मेरे बाबा बहुत बेचैन है इस रात में. वो बार बार दोहरा रहे हैं कि मैं देख रहा हूँ कि रसूल खुदा का वादा पूरा होने वाला है. ये वो एक रात है जिसमें हमारे लिए बेचैनी है, जिसमें हमारे मौला बेचैन है, जिसमें उनको एहसास हो रहा है कि वो आखिरी लम्हे आ रहे हैं. और उम्मे कुलसूम खुद भी बहुत बेचैन है देख के मेरे बाबा की हालत को. जब इफ्तार पेश होता है तो दूध और नमक लाया जाता है और मेरे मौला कहते हैं कि या उम्मे कुलसूम, तुमने कभी देखा अपने बाबा को ये दोनों चीज़ें एक वक्त में खाते हुए? एक इनमें से ले जाओ, दूध को यहाँ से ले जाओ. क्या हालत बेचैन है उम्मे कुलसूम के घर में, क्या सूरत हाल है उम्मे कुलसूम के घर में कि मौला जो हैं अब देखें इंतज़ार में हैं. کس چیز کے انتظار میں ہے مولا؟ کس چیز کی جلدی ہے مولا کہ آپ دنیا کو چھوڑ کے جا رہے ہیں، ہمیں چھوڑ کے جا رہے ہیں، اپنی اولاد کو چھوڑ کے جا رہے ہیں؟ جب شب ضربت پہ ذکر ہوتا ہے اور جب ضربت لگتی ہے، اس صبح کو امام حسن جاتے ہیں، امام حسن حاضر ہوتے ہیں، مولا علی کہتے ہیں ضربت کے بعد فستو برب الکعبہ، اور مولا امام حسن سے کہتے ہیں کہ نماز پڑھاؤ۔ نماز پڑھانے کے بعد مولا حسن کی جب صورتحال دیکھتے ہیں کہ وہ رونا شروع ہو گیا ہے، مولا امام حسن جو ہیں بابا کو لے کے جاتے ہیں اور دیکھتے ہیں راستے میں امام حسین کو، اور امام حسین کو جب ملتے ہیں تو دیکھتے ہیں ان کی آنکھیں جو ہیں رونے سے جو ہیں ان کو زخم لگ گئے ہیں۔ مولا علی پھر بھی نہیں روتے، ان سے کہتے ہیں صبر کرو بیٹا، صبر کرو۔ آگے جاتے ہیں تو جب گھر کو پہنچتے ہیں تو کہتے ہیں سارے اپنے اصحاب کو جو جمع ہوتے ہیں ان سے کہتے ہیں یہاں سے جاؤ یہاں سے، ہمیں چھوڑ دو، ہمیں گھر پہ اکیلا چھوڑ دو۔ جب کسی اصحاب نے پوچھا کہ کیوں، احساس ہوا کہ مولا جب گھر میں جائیں گے تو بیٹیاں آئیں گی، زینب آئے گی، ام کلثوم آئے گی، اور بین شروع ہوئے گا اور رونا شروع ہوئے گا، اور مولا نہیں چاہتے کہ غیر مرد ان کی بیٹیوں کو روتے ہوئے سنیں۔ یا مولا یہ میدان اب ہے، اور کہاں ہے میدان شام اور میدان کوفہ، جہاں پہ اصحاب نہیں سن رہے ہوئیں گے آپ کی بیٹیوں کو روتے ہوئے، ملعونین سنیں گے آپ کی بیٹیوں کو روتے ہوئے، ملعونین دیکھیں گے تماشا آپ کی بیٹیوں کا۔ وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلِبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ عَلَى لَعْنَةُ اللَّهِ عَلَى الْقَوْمِ الظَّالِمِينَ۔ یا اللہ یا اللہ یا اللہ، یا محمود بحق محمد، یا اعلیٰ بحق علی، یا فاطر السماوات بحق فاطمہ، یا محسن بحق الحسن، یا قدیم الاحسان بحق الحسین، یا اللہ بحق هذه المجلس وبحق هذه الليلة وبحق هذه المقام، اللہم عجل ولیک الفرج، اللہم عجل ولیک الفرج، اللہم عجل۔ جو کوئی بھی مریض ہے اسے شفاء کامل عطا ہو، جو کوئی بھی ضرورت مند ہے اس کی ضرورتیں پوری ہوں، جس کی بھی حاجتیں اس کی حاجتیں پوری ہوں۔ یا اللہ ہماری اولادوں کو نیک اور صالح قرار دے، ہماری مشکلیں آسان کرے، سارے جو مؤمنین دنیا میں ہیں ان کی مشکلیں آسان کرے، اور امام زمان کا جلد سے جلد ظہور فرما۔ رحم اللہ من یقرأ سورہ فاتحہ مع الصلوات۔ صلی اللہ علیہ محمد۔ بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم۔ ماتم ہے